So, what is EC2? Why exactly you need that? Let's start with this concept. See, EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. What's that? It is Elastic Compute Cloud. Fine. So what do you mean by Elastic Compute Cloud? This means that it gives you the resizable compute capacity in the cloud. What do you mean by that? It gives you the resizable compute capacity in the cloud. So let me just write down the exact definition for your reference. It gives you, or it is a kind of, we can say, let me just rewrite for you. So that it provides resizable compute capacity. It provides resizable compute capacity in the cloud. So if I say resizable, this clearly means that you can increase or decrease its capacity. Provides resizable compute capacity in the cloud. Now the thing is that, what do you mean by compute capacity? See, the thing is that you need to run some applications and some workloads. You need to have some compute capacity in that case. Okay. For example, let's take one simple example to help things understand or allow us to understand things in a much better way. Let's imagine that, for example, this is my AWS, or this is AWS cloud infrastructure. This is AWS cloud. Simple, right? Now, the thing is, this is something called a virtual machine. What's that? It's a virtual machine. Which means that this machine is not exactly physical. Of course, a virtual machine is running on a physical machine itself. So it's a virtual machine. Now, this virtual machine will have some compute capabilities. For example, it will have some amount of RAM, some storage. It will have something called virtual CPU, or it will have something called virtual GPUs, etc. blah blah blah. So the thing is that you get access to a lot of computing stuff, and you can make use of this virtual machine upon which you can run some applications and workloads. For example, I can run upon it a Drupal website, a WordPress site, any type of application, maybe a firewall, any software, any website, web server, even a database. I can run a database upon this virtual machine. So it's nothing but it's a virtual machine. Now, this virtual machine has some amount of RAM, some storage, some virtual CPUs, GPUs, etc. Fine. And this means that this is the compute capacity you get. You get the compute capacity. You get some amount of RAM, storage, virtual CPU, GPUs, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And upon this virtual machine, you deploy your websites. You can also deploy your databases as well. Now, I'll be sharing these notes with you at the end of the session or to the YouTube channel. So this virtual machine, from AWS perspective, is called an EC2 instance. In the short form, we also pronounce it as instance because EC2 instance is hard to pronounce as compared to instance. So you can use any of these two words. Either you can call it as EC2 instance or simply an instance. So if I ask you, what is an EC2 instance? It's nothing but it's a virtual machine. It is essentially a virtual machine which has some compute capacity that you run on AWS cloud infrastructure. Fine. Okay. Now, in AWS, how you define the compute capacity? Any idea about that, guys? It is just kind of a question for you. How do you define the compute capacity? What thing you use in EC2 to define the compute capabilities? Any idea about that? You can give a try. What type of capability or what feature you use in EC2 to define the compute capacity of your instance or the virtual machine? If you have any idea, you can just give input on the chat box or the question window. Okay. RAM virtuals. No. I got the option. I got the answer from you, Jatin, but what exactly that term is? Which feature in EC2 it gives you the all these different attributes as a package? You give a shot. Okay. Let me just tell you. This thing is defined by something called instance type. What's that? Instance type. Instance type is nothing but it is a virtual representation of underlying physical resources of your instance, of underlying physical resources of your virtual machine, of your VM, or simply to put that from, or in AWS perspective, an EC2 instance. It defines the amount of RAM, virtual CPU, disk, storage, everything for an instance. For example, I just give you one example right now. T2.micro is an instance type. Okay. This gives you one virtual CPU, a 2.5 gigahertz of Intel Xeon processor, and this gives you 1 gig of RAM and some storage. Fine. Usually you get 8 gig or 30 gig depending upon whether it's a Windows instance or a Linux instance. You get some amount of storage. So these are some of the basic things that you have to understand. To define that what are the compute resources of an instance, you need to make use of the instance type, which is nothing but it's a virtual representation of the underlying physical resources. Fine. Okay. I think you got the point. What exactly I want to convey over here. Now, the thing is that we have talked about the hardware specifications of an instance, right? What we have discussed, that what defines the hardware specifications of the instance. But what about the software packages? How can we decide that what type of operating system needs to be installed upon the virtual machine? For example, the operating system that I want to choose from, there are two different operating systems you can choose from in AWS. One is Linux, or you can choose Windows. These are two popular server-based operating systems you can make use of. Then you also make use of the operating system, Linux or Windows. You want to decide that what type of applications you want to run, even the software, scripts, etc. So you want to deploy everything upon this instance or the virtual machine, right? Now, the thing is that, which is that capability or the feature that gives you all these things as a package? Any idea about that? If you have read somewhere, of course, I'll give you the answer. Which is that single package, or it's I would say, a single template that encapsulates so many things to be deployed upon a virtual machine or an EC2 instance? If you've read somewhere, you can just give a shot. What is that? You can just give a shot. If the answer is wrong, that's absolutely fine. At least you can try. In AWS, what is that single component that defines all these things as a single package? Okay. So that single packet is called an Amazon Machine Image, or AMI. What's that? AMI, that stands for Amazon Machine Image. Okay, it's a template that encapsulates everything, including the operating system, application, software, and scripts to be deployed upon the instance as a single package. That's what the AMI is. Fine. Guys, any questions so far? I'm going to put myself on mute for a few seconds just to ensure that we are on the right track. We are on the right page. Any questions you have? I just put myself on mute for a few seconds. Let me know if you have any questions. No questions, guys? Okay. Now, guys, one thing, just try to make sure that you can put the questions and understand the concept, because I just want to ensure that there's 100% participant or feedback from you. So if you don't have any questions, just type in no, so that I can get to that. Yes, we are understanding the things from scratch. Fine. Okay. Now, the next thing that we have to understand, or we have to look into, is, so we understood the AMI, the instance type. Fine. The next thing that we have to understand is the concept of IP address, right? So let's understand this concept of IP address. We should, or we need to understand this concept from scratch, and we need to understand that how exactly our machines can communicate with some other machines in the same or a different network. Okay. So what are three types of IP addresses? I'm going to list three different types of IP addresses over here. And of course, after that, I will just try with some hands-on. So what are three different types of IP addresses? The first one type of IP address that you can look into, or you need to understand, is the private IP. By the way, why you need the IP addresses? Because you want your virtual machines or the instance to communicate with some other instances or the machines on the internet or within the internal network. So the first thing we have to understand is that we have something called private IP. Private IPs. Okay. Any idea why we need the private IPs? We need the private IPs because it facilitates internal communication. What's that? It facilitates internal communication. Okay. So yeah, you're right, Jatin, to communicate in the same VPC. Guys, I can see that Jatin is participating and giving the inputs and the feedback. I also encourage that other people can also give their feedbacks or inputs. So it facilitates internal communication. So what do we mean by internal communication? For example, I just set one example for you. Let's imagine this is my AWS cloud. I'm not go to VPC details as of now. Let's imagine this is my AWS infrastructure. I have two virtual machines, A and B, running in the same cloud, same network, and they want to talk to each other. Okay. So for example, I want to address you. So I'll call you by names like Edmund, Gary, Ghanshyam, Jatin, Rakshit, Serge, Vivian, Ashutosh, David, Ed. So I'll call you by names. If I want to speak to you, I want to communicate with you, I'll call you by names. Similarly, if two machines, two instances, they want to talk to each other, they will recognize each other using the private IPs internally. Right? So they make use of private IPs. They have to make use of the private IPs so that within the same network, they can easily talk. They can chat. They can communicate. They can send or receive traffic to each other. It's really, really important that you have that kind of capability. Now, these private IPs, they fall in certain ranges. They have certain ranges that they fall into. So the first range is 10.x.x.x. Okay. The second thing is we have this one. We have 172.16.x.x up to 172.31.x.x, right? And the third range is, we have this thing called 192.168.x.x. Now, what does X denote over here? X denotes any number between 0 to 255. Simple. Okay. These are the three different numbers or ranges that we use to define or structure our private IPs. Fine. That's what about the private IP is. The second type of IP that you always need if you want to have the machine exposed to the internet is the public IP. Okay. Now, this is nothing but this is an IP which exposes your instance to the internet. Your instances to the internet. What I mean by that? They're used purely for external communication. Okay? They're used for external communication. Now, what do you mean by external communication? Which means that, for example, okay, let me just draw a simple diagram for you so that you can understand that in a much better way. Let's imagine this is my AWS cloud, right? Okay, let me just write AWS underneath. And this is my virtual machine, an EC2 instance. Now, it wants to communicate with the biggest public cloud, which is our internet. It's the biggest public cloud, right? Out there. Now, there has to be some two-way communication that you need to allow. So AWS is your private cloud. Private cloud, let's suppose, and you want to talk to it to the public cloud, which is the internet. To open this communication, it's really important that you attach a public IP with this instance. If you don't do that, it will not be able to communicate with the external network, especially the internet. It has to be there. Okay? Now, what are the ranges they fall into? So, if you talk about the ranges, now guys, I'm going in depth. Of course, I'm also discussing the basics, but I'm pretty much sure that not all of us know that. So it's really important that I discuss the basics first, and then I go to the intermediate, and then go to the advanced level. Okay. Now, ranges means except. You can define your public IP in any of the ranges except private IP range. So I've already discussed with you what are the private IP address ranges. Right? So a public IP can be any IP except it should not fall in any of these three ranges. Fine. And also except loopback IP. Any idea about the loopback IP? If you are from the networking background, or if you have done some troubleshooting in the past, loopback IP is 127.0.0.1. It's used for troubleshooting. Okay? It's purely used for troubleshooting, so you don't use that anywhere. For troubleshooting, so usually we don't use any 127 IPs. 127.x.x.x. We don't use it anywhere. So apart from these two different IP address ranges, any IP can be a public IP. Fine. Now, there's a downside of a public IP. What's the downside? Okay, first thing first. Who assigns it? Okay. Who assigns it? Who assigns a public IP? Who assigns them? It's either AWS, or you can, as a customer or as a solutions architect, you can bring your own IP. You can lease your IPs from your service provider. You can lease public IPs from your ISPs. Okay. Either you can allow AWS to attach the public IPs to instance automatically. In that case, it's free of cost. You don't have to pay even a single penny for it. But if you lease out the IPs from the service providers, you have to pay for it. Now, the question really is why? Why exactly you need to pay money to lease the public IPs from the service providers and use with your infrastructure? Because sometimes you need to have uniformity across your infrastructure. Okay, let's imagine. I'll just give you one example so that you just try to understand that. For example, this is your data center. This is your branch office. Nice looking building. Like in Manhattan, for example, this is your branch office. Okay. Now, you have a set of public IP that you're using. For example, 57.0.0.0/16. I'm just giving you one example. It's a complete range. This range can consist of thousands of IPs. Okay. Now, you want to also use this range in AWS because you have adjoined these two different infrastructures because you're using, for example, VPN or using Direct Connect. You've adjoined AWS and your own office network, and you want to have uniformity of the IPs across two different networks. In that case, you can bring your own IP and use that in AWS. Makes sense? Fine. That's what the purpose is. That's why you're going to be using this public IP, or you can bring your own IPs and use that public IP on AWS. That's what the concept is. That's why you use it. Okay. Now, the thing is, there's a very big downside for that. Can someone tell me what's the downside of having a public IP? Any idea about that? David, Ed, Edmund, Ghanshyam, Jatin, Rakshit, Serge, Vivian, you can just give a shot. What can be the downside? Can be compromised? Okay. Guess other people can also give a shot. You can be hacked. Okay. Any idea about that? What else you can guess that why the public IP has some downsides? Okay. See, there's only one downside of public IP. That is, it is not static in nature. If I say static, I mean to say permanent. It changes by itself. Okay. Now you say, is it a downside? Yes, it is. Especially in the cases if you have websites running upon the instances. For example, let me just give you a very simple example so that you understand this concept in a much better way. Let's imagine this is AWS infrastructure. This is your EC2 instance. Fine. Now, you have attached a public IP with it. For example, 16.72.74.82. This is the public IP attached to the instance. Now, you have these external users on the internet. These are your external, I would say these are your internet users. Okay. For them, you have deployed a website upon the instance. For example, upon this instance, you have deployed a website, a WordPress site. Okay. Now, how these users will reach the website? Simple. These users will type your domain name xyz.com. Okay. This will hit the DNS server or servers, and the DNS server will do the translation and convert that domain to the IP address. You got the point? This is a very basic thing that works behind the scenes. For example, today you go and type in google.com, facebook.com, instagram.com, any website that you access on daily basis. You type the domain name. Behind the scenes, there are some DNS servers, domain name servers active. So what are these? These are domain name servers active. These are domain name servers which are active. They will take your domain and convert it to the public IP address of that website or the machine running that website. And eventually you're able to access the web pages. Fine. This is what the basic mechanism is. Now, the problem arises if this public IP address changes. Okay. Now, how the public IP address changes? Public IPs change if you stop, or I would say if you restart the instance. If you restart the instance, or instance gets restarted, it will eventually change the public IP. Okay? And if you don't change the settings at the domain server or the DNS server, user will not be able to access your website. So if this component changes and you don't change your DNS server entries, your users will not go anywhere. Okay? This is a very big downside of having a public IP. Fine. Now, to fix this issue, there's a third category of IP address I'm going to discuss with you right now. Any idea about that third category of the IP that fixes this issue? It starts from E as in echo. You might have heard about it somewhere in the talk. Oh, okay. Jatin, EIP, what's the full form of it? I have forgot about that. External IP? Nope. It's elastic IP. Okay, but it was a good try. At least you know the short form, but the full form is the elastic IP. Okay, so the third type of IP which fixes the shortcoming of a downside of the public IP is called elastic IP. Because these things matter a lot. In the examination or in the production, these are the small details that you have to learn. Okay? And believe me, we strive for very detailed structure or detailed overview of any concept. But if you start from basics, believe me, the advanced things are very, very easy. Once you understand the basic concepts, learning the advanced concepts, it becomes very handy for you. So that's what the purpose of these masterclasses is, that you understand the basics first. And of course, as we progress further in the upcoming webinars, we're going to take it a step further. Okay. So let's understand the concept of elastic IPs. Of course, I'll deep dive into these things later on. First thing first, they're same as public IPs. They have the same usage to expose your instance to the internet, but they are static in nature. They don't change. They don't change. They have same range as public IPs. They have same range as public IPs. Okay. Who assigns them? It is the solutions architect, or I would say the customer. Customer means that you as the solutions architect or SA, you assign it. Okay. It never changes. It never changes no matter if you restart the instance. I can go in depth. I can have a separate session on the Elastic IPs, but right now I just want to restrict to the basic concepts. Fine. So what we have discussed so far, we have discussed the concept of EC2. What is that? It gives you the resizable compute capacity in the cloud. What's the instance type, the AMI, and the 3 different types of IP addresses. Okay, no questions? All right, that's fine. So looks like we can go further now. So let's do one thing. Let me just launch an instance in front of you, and just, of course, I'll discuss some more basic facts with you. But right now, let's go to the compute section. So first thing first, I think all of you have access to the AWS Management Console, the feature account. All of you have access to it. Okay, because it's very, very important that each one of you should have access to a free tier account. Why use it? Because to practice, to have the hands-on. So I just go to the EC2 under the compute section. That's time for Elastic Compute Cloud. And let's do one thing. Let's go to the running instances. As of now, I don't have no instance up and running. I click on launch instance. Now, this is what I was talking about, the Amazon Machine Image, or the AMI. Now, if you can see the definition at the top, it's pretty much clear. An AMI is a template that contains the software configuration, including the operating system, application server, and applications that are needed to launch your instance from scratch. Okay? These are the 3 main components of the AMI. What's an AMI? It's a template that consists of the entire software config of your virtual machine, including the operating system, application server, and applications that are needed to boot the instance from scratch. You have to have that. Okay. Now, these are the public AMIs. So if you broadly categorize your AMIs in terms of operating systems, we have Linux and Windows. The topmost are Linux AMIs. You can see there are different flavors or different Linux distributions like Amazon Linux 2, Red Hat, Ubuntu, and so on. Also, we have the Microsoft Windows-based AMIs. Each AMI will consist of a special AMI ID. Fine. Okay. Now, these AMIs that you can see, so if you see on the left-hand side, these are the quick start menus. What's that? These are the quick start menus. Quick start consists of the public AMIs. Public AMIs means that it's common for you and me. If you open your own account and you go to the AMI page, you will find the same AMIs on your page. It's public in nature. It's available to each one of us who has access to the AWS account. Then you have my AMIs. Okay. Any idea what my AMIs means over here? If you have learned somewhere, what do you mean by my AMIs? Of course, I'll discuss the concept with you. Any idea what exactly you mean by my AMIs? Of course, so Chandan is saying it's AMI created by ourselves. Okay, great. And what's the purpose of it? Why exactly you need it? What exactly you need it? Created by ourselves, structured, great. Okay. See, let's see. The thing is that if you just go to quick start options, these are raw AMIs which can be used by anyone. Okay, so Chandan is saying we can use it as OS for EC2. Absolutely. See, the thing is that when you use any AMI, a public AMI, which is common for you and me, it's not customized, right? So you want your own application services running upon the instance or the instances. In an organization, in a production environment, these AMIs that you can see on my screen are not used. This thing you have to understand. You will not use these AMIs in a production environment. For development, for testing purpose, of course, you're going to be using them. But in a production environment, you have to depend upon my AMIs a lot. What do you mean by that? See, my AMIs are your customized AMIs. How they're being structured, let me just discuss this concept with you. It's very, very important from the exam perspective and from the operations perspective. So, what's the concept of my AMIs? Let's understand that. See, my AMIs means, let me just use a different color this time. So, my AMIs means that these are your customized AMIs. These are your customized AMIs. Fine. Which means that they have the set of services and applications pre-configured as per your own preferences and taste. Let's take an example. Let's imagine, let's tell you the entire process, how it's being built. Just focus on this concept, because if you understand this concept, the things in the future would be very easy. And believe me, you not see that concept a lot, but being told by you by the instructors, because this is the building block of the AMI. I'm just telling you the entire structure. Let's imagine this is my EC2 instance. This is my EC2 instance. Fine. Now, the very first step to manufacture your customized AMI is that you launch an EC2 instance using a public AMI. Okay? What do? You launch an instance using a public AMI. Right? Then, in the second step, what you do? You install your applications, your set of applications, services, software, etc. upon this instance. So the thing is that the public AMI will give you the platform. Upon that platform, you install everything. Plus, you do the customizations of the services and software running upon the instance. You perform the customizations. So what are the first steps? First two steps, you launch an instance using a public AMI, and you install everything upon the instance using the you deploy the application, services, software upon the instance, and you perform some customizations. Done. In the third step, what you do? You capture image out of it, which becomes your my AMI. Right? Now, if you use that AMI, you can launch any number of instances through it. 100, thousands, 10,000s, even millions, with same set of application services running upon them, with same set of services and applications running upon them. So you don't have to manually run the software, install software every time you boot the instance. You simply use the AMI, your customized AMI, and use that AMI to launch any number of instances, and all the instances will have the same set of services and applications running upon them. This is the 3-step procedure to manufacture a customized AMI. Fine. In the latest stages, I will show you that how you do that. It's a fairly simple process for you to understand. Okay. This is the 3-step process. Now, the thing is that, let's do one thing. Let's shoot back to this thing. In the latest stages, I will show you that how you do that. Right now, we're going to skip it. Marketplace, there's a third category. You can purchase the AMIs from different vendors like Juniper, Microsoft, SAP, Zend, etc. So this is called software as a service. You purchase the softwares in form of AMIs from them, and most of them are being paid. You have to pay for them. Community AMIs, this is a developer effort or community effort, I would say that. You can also share your AMIs in this public domain. So if I create any my AMI, by default it's private in nature, but you can share that on that public platform. That's the community AMIs. Most of these community AMIs are used for the testing purpose. So in your production environment, what are you going to be using? My AMI, AMIs, or the AWS Marketplace? Fine. So guys, is this concept clear to you? Because even though this concept is really basic, but I presented to you in the form so that you can understand this thing in a much better way. Any question you have? Okay, no questions? Fine. So I'll choose my instance right now. The AMI. Then I choose instance type. That's t2.micro. Now this is what I was talking about. Rakshit saying, sir, this recorded video will be available in YouTube channel. Absolutely. So once this thing is over, I'll share this with you on the YouTube, and I'll just broadcast the YouTube link through Udemy. I'll do that. Okay. Of course, this will be available on YouTube later on. Okay. Now I choose instance type. It's called t2.micro. As I said before, it's nothing but it's the virtual representation of the underlying physical resources. I choose it, click on next, configure instance details. Right? Now this is where a lot of details you have to look into, a lot of details, in-depth details you have to look into to understand that how the instance is being configured. First thing first, you define the number of instances. Okay. I can deploy 10, 20, 30, any number of instances in one single shot. But since we are doing it just for the testing purpose, I'll stick to only one instance. Auto-scaling group, we'll discuss it afterwards. It's nothing but it's a logical collection of instances for automation purpose. We're going to discuss that afterwards. Purchasing option. Now, you might have heard about some purchasing options like on-demand, maybe reserved, all this kind of stuff. So in a free-tier account, if you deploy an instance, by default, it's an on-demand purchasing option. Of course, we can have a separate lecture upon that. On-demand means that you're being charged for the number of hours consumed. Okay. So any idea how many hours you get in a free-tier account? Any idea about that? It's really important that you use the free-tier account in a much precise way, because if you exceed the free-tier limits, because free-tier is not entirely free. There are some pre-imposed limits. If you exceed those limits, you're being charged for that. No idea? This is where people make a lot of mistakes. Many mistakes, because they get hundreds dollars of bill a month, and they are shocked, astonished that why we got that bill, because the free account is not entirely free. There's some limits. See, the thing is that, let me just discuss with you, and then we're going to wrap up very shortly. So you get 750 hours in a free tier account. I'm just talking about for the EC2, just talking about the EC2 in a free tier account. Okay, you get 750 hours each month. Now, free tier account, it's valid for how many months? 12 months. So each month you get 750 hours to run your Linux based instances upon T2.micro platform. What's a T2.micro? It's the instance type. Okay, so it is not the number of instances that you run in a month, it's the amount of hours consumed. So 750 hours a month, running instances, running hours. It's like you pay your electricity bills. So you pay by the number of units consumed by all the appliances. The same concept applies over here. Apart from that, you get 750 hours each month to run your Windows-based instances. Okay, to run your Windows-based instances upon the same platform, T2.micro. So in total, you get 1500, 750 for Windows and 750 for Linux. Fine. If you exceed this pre-imposed limit, you're gonna be charged for that. You'll be charged for that, exceeding the limits. Okay. Now I will stop right now and not go further because the thing is that I want to ensure that we don't exceed the amount of information we can digest in one single shot. Because as I said before, this is my first interaction with you, Udemy students, because I teach classes as well. But this is my first interaction with you. I just want to make sure that in the very first interaction, I don't overload you with the information. This is a first webinar with you. From today onwards, I'll just make sure that we have 3 slots each week. Okay, and I'll just continue this thing with you in the future as well. I'll just discuss the further details with you in the upcoming webinar, maybe in next 2 days or 3 days. So thank you so much. You guys are great. So do post your questions through Udemy if you have any. And of course, in the live sessions, we'll have more questions in the future. Of course, in the upcoming session, I'll also enable the feature for you to speak your questions. So you can discuss with me. I can put you off the mute and you can discuss with me the things. So guys, once again, thank you so much. Goodbye. Bye-bye.